The bright studio lights burned white against the polished wood of the debate stage, so hot you could almost smell the varnish rising from the floor. Cameras swept across the room like hawks searching for prey, their red tally lights blinking, with the promise that every moment here would be broadcast to millions. The air was dense with the hum of equipment and the restless murmurs of the audience. Some leaning forward, others slouched back, already preparing for a long night. At center stage stood Senator Clay Whitmore, tall, silver-haired, and proud. His voice, rich and deep, like an old cathedral bell, carried across the hall. He had been speaking for 47 minutes without pause, a master of political endurance. His supporters in the front row wore small, polite smiles. Everyone else looked like they were drifting into a trance, half listening. About dinner, on the far side, standing with her hands clasped in front of her, was Kennedy Walsh. She was 34, a rising star in politics, known not for bluster, but for her piercing clarity. Her dark hair framed a face that seemed perpetually alert, eyes that listened harder than most people spoke. Kennedy had learned long ago that power wasn't in the volume of your voice, but in the precision of your words. She had grown up in a working-class Boston neighborhood, the daughter of a bus driver and a school nurse. At 12, she'd stood in a cramped city hall meeting, watching her father beg for safer bus routes after 2 accidents on his line. She remembered the council members leaning back, asking loaded questions, and wasting precious minutes on political posturing. That day had left a mark. Kennedy hated wasted time. And here, in this studio, with Whitmore's speech stretching into the realm of eternity, she could feel that old frustration boiling inside. Whitmore was the opposite of her in almost every way. Born into wealth, educated in the Ivy League, his life had been a smooth river with only carefully chosen bends. He was charming, meticulous, and utterly convinced that more words meant more power. And when we consider the fiscal implications, we must, ladies and gentlemen, be mindful of the complex interplay of he continued, glancing at his notes, like a captain checking the compass. His speech was meant to crush Kennedy's proposal on education reform, a plan to redirect excess military spending toward rural schools. But instead of attacking her directly, he wrapped his opposition in a slow, sticky web of tangents, hoping the public would simply tune out before she could. Speak. In the control room, a producer whispered into a headset, "We've got 3 minutes left in this segment. She's not going to get a word in." But Kennedy wasn't planning on letting that happen. She'd been listening the whole time, sifting through Whitmore's verbal avalanche, waiting for the perfect opening. She could feel her pulse in her throat. Her palms were warm. Her mind was a bowstring, drawn tight. 2 subplots were already in motion outside this stage. The first, in her personal life, Kennedy's younger brother Liam had been calling her every night. His small construction business was drowning under debts. And though she wanted desperately to help him, any sign of financial entanglement could be political suicide. She'd been carrying his worry in her chest all week, trying to find a way to protect him without compromising her integrity. The second, a group of teachers from a struggling district in West Virginia had flown to Washington to support her bill. They were sitting somewhere in the audience tonight, holding worn manila folders full of photographs, leaking ceilings, outdated textbooks, children bundled in coats inside cold classrooms. She could feel their presence like a quiet weight. Behind her, she couldn't let Whitmore's endless monologue bury their voices, which is why, in summation, one must conclude, Whitmore droned. And then, it happened. In his rush to loop back to his earlier point, Whitmore repeated almost the exact same sentence he'd used 20 minutes ago. Kennedy seized it. She leaned forward, her voice calm but clear enough to cut the air. "Senator," she said, "are you filibustering the truth?" 5 words. No shout, no insult, just a question so sharp it could split stone. The room froze. Cameras pivoted toward her. The audience inhaled as one. Even the senator blinked, momentarily disarmed, as if he'd been slapped by something invisible. A smattering of applause rose, hesitant at first, then swelling into cheers. The moderator, sensing a live TV miracle, leaned in. "Senator Whitmore, would you like to respond?" But Whitmore's eloquence had cracked. He chuckled awkwardly, muttered something about respectful discourse, and finally, mercifully, fell silent. The rest of the time was Kennedy's. She didn't waste a second. She spoke directly to the people watching at home, not the senator, painting pictures of rural classrooms, of children with boundless potential trapped in systems starved of resources. Her voice was measured but fierce, each word landing like a hammer on the foundation of her argument. In that moment, the subplots collided. She thought of Liam, of how every struggling business owner was just one break away from stability. She thought of those teachers in the audience, holding their folders like shields against indifference. She thought of her father in that city hall meeting, and how badly the world needed fewer speeches and more answers. When the segment ended, the applause was deafening. Whitmore tried to shake her hand. She accepted, but her eyes didn't waver from his dot. Later that night, in the quiet of her apartment, Kennedy finally let herself exhale. Liam had left her a voicemail. He'd found a buyer for some old equipment. Enough to buy him time. The teachers had texted her photos of them celebrating in a diner. And though she knew the fight for her bill had only begun, she could feel the tide shifting. She sat by the window, city lights flickering in the distance, and thought about those 5 words. Power, she realized, wasn't about dominating the room. It was about breaking through the noise, finding the truth that lay beneath all the clutter, and making it impossible to ignore. The next morning, headlines blazed. Kennedy destroys senator's long-winded speech with just 5 words on live TV on for every person who had ever felt unheard, who had ever drowned under someone else's endless talking. It wasn't just a headline, it was proof that sometimes the shortest sentences carry the longest echoes.